Hola, hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está? Sí,
¿Hablas español?
sí, 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 hablo
Muy
español.
buena.
In this video, I'm going to describe my experience in Cartagena, Colombia after studying Spanish for about a year. To summarize my experience in Cartagena, I would use the phrase ignorance is bliss, and I would say that for two reasons. One, ignorance was bliss for me in terms of the language, and then second, in terms of the culture and just the experience of being in the country of Colombia. And I know that's kind of vague right now, but it'll make sense later on in the video. And so to start this video off, what I want to do is talk about or my experience with the language in particular. And so I use the phrase ignorance is bliss to describe my experience with the language because had you asked me before I went to Colombia in general and specifically Cartagena, hey, Michael, how do you feel about your Spanish ability? Do you feel like you could handle yourself in a Spanish-speaking country? On a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of my confidence level, I honestly, arrogantly, in retrospect, I can say this, that it was an arrogant perspective. I would have argued that my Spanish level was at an 8. And I'm not saying fluency level, I'm just saying comfortability in day-to-day situations. But actually being in Colombia and being in Cartagena, it humbled me. It showed me that some basic things that I would assume I would have known, like certain greetings, certain saying, certain things that are just common down there. And I'm gonna assume, I would assume are common in other Spanish-speaking countries. I wasn't accustomed to because I was not in those experiences, sitting in my kitchen or in my living room studying Spanish. And so, the first thing I want to describe is the fact that although before visiting Cartagena, Colombia, I could in conversations virtually and in conversations with other people and reading and listening to content, I was able to understand the majority of what I heard. But for some reason, there was about a 2 to 3 second delay with any conversation that I had for my brain. So if somebody said something to me, I could hear it, I could understand the words, but the actual meaning, for some reason, I can't really describe the experience better than this. There was about a 2 to 3 second delay before my brain actually understood what was being communicated to me. And so I noticed that it got progressively better as the trip moved on and I got more comfortable in daily interactions and literally speaking to everybody in Spanish. I guess that's like a little glitch in my brain where it's used to receiving information in English in situations that I'm accustomed to, but it took me a while before my brain was able to readily respond to people and communicate in Spanish. So that's the first thing that I noticed. And like I said, my ignorance initially had me thinking that I didn't think I was super great in Spanish, but I was very confident. And I've realized now, like, although you can communicate, you're at a very, you're barely past the beginner level is what I've learned through my trip there. The other thing that I learned is that it's almost impossible to really learn a language from these books, from these grammar books, from these formal lessons. And here's why. Books, it makes no sense for a formal grammar book to explain to you colloquial speech or the way the common man or woman speaks. It just doesn't make sense. It's not of academia, quote unquote. And same for a formal tutor that you have. They're not going to speak to you in a way that is of the I don't want to use this figure of speech, but like the people of the average person, they're not going to speak to you that way. Even I don't do that. If I'm speaking to somebody that does not speak English natively, I'm going to speak a little bit more proper. I'm going to try to enunciate a little better. I'm not going to speak the way I would with my friend that I've had since kindergarten. And so my point in saying that is that when I got there, I really learned that like almost no one speaks the way that I'm accustomed to hearing Spanish in my formal lessons and reading Spanish in these books. The written language, the formal language, the language that we learn is much different than the language that's actually spoken. And I know that's somewhat of an obvious point, but it's just, you would assume, I don't know, at least I assume that, hey, even though I don't really know how the average person speaks, I'll be able to, handle myself well. But there were many, many times where people were saying basic things to me that just because they were saying it in a different way, I did not understand. And it makes sense, right? In English, if you land at an airport in Atlanta, for example, I live in Atlanta. If you land at the airport in Atlanta, the taxi drivers that you encounter outside of the airport or the Uber drivers, no one is going to speak to you like this. Hi, my name is Josh or whatever. Hi, my name is Josh. Do you need a ride to your hotel? No one speaks that way. So if you're not accustomed to hearing the way that the average person speaks, the rhythm of the average person's tone of voice, things like that, it's just, I don't know if that's something that you can learn at home unless you just dedicate so much time. And I personally, I don't really, I have time to study Spanish. I prioritize it, but I don't have 3 hours a day to sit and consume as much, all the content that I can to get accustomed to those things. So I say that to say I think it really was beneficial for me to put myself in a country, and I think in the future possibly live in a country where I'm exposed to the actual language, the day-to-day language. On a positive note, I was optimistic because people actually could understand me. I'm assuming that it was obvious with my accent. I try to work on the accent, but it was obvious that most people knew I was a gringo, an American. But people were telling me that I'm communicating clearly. Like I was able to communicate my thoughts well. The problem for me, like I described already, was understanding. That was more of an issue for me than communicating. So I was proud of myself in that regard. On another note, I would recommend Colombia in general, and specifically Cartagena, as a great place to practice Spanish if you're looking to go somewhere. Because although it's a very touristic city, most people are going to speak to you in Spanish, even though they know that you're an American. And from my experience, like people have basic English levels to be able to sell things to you and stuff like that. But like having full English conversations, I didn't really see a lot of people that were at that level, which is a good thing for, us, people that are trying to learn the Spanish language. And so I would definitely recommend Cartagena as a place to go and practice your Spanish. And I have some videos coming out where you can see that I had the opportunity to do that with some people on the beach and all that. So that's another point I wanted to make. What else? Yeah, I think that's it for the language in particular. I don't want this video to be super long. The last point I wanted to make about the language is that, like, here's something that I would call automatic language, right? And what I would describe that as in English would be a situation where you go to a store, you say, "Hey, how are you doing?" "I'm good. How are you?" "Thank you." Those basic, I know that seems like, that's automatic language for us, right? That's unconscious almost. You're accustomed to saying that. You're accustomed to saying these things. Somebody says, "Thank you, you're welcome." What's crazy is for some reason my brain went into like yes mode, and what that means is somebody says thank you to me, or gracias. Sí. That's what my brain went to. De nada. Sí. ¿Cómo está? Sí. My brain just went into C mode for some reason, yes mode, where I would just respond to things with yes versus the actual proper response. And so that's something else that I noticed. Again, these are not conscious things. It's just stuff that happened. I guess my brain was kind of, morphing itself to that environment, and it just had a little period of malfunction to get me in the right mode. But I noticed that as well. All right, so to make this video not too long, we're already at 7 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and go now into the other portion of the ignorance is bliss section of this video, which is the culture and just the vibe of Cartagena, Colombia, and Colombia in general. What I've been telling my friends and everybody else that I've spoken to about Colombia is that, and Cartagena in particular, but in this section of the video, I kind of want to talk about Colombia in general. Here's the point I want to make. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. And that works in both the positive and the negative. So what I mean by that is this. I love the United States. I love, where I live. I love the city that I'm from, and I love the city that I live in. But, and I know it's tough to describe, but there's a vibe, and I don't want to romanticize it, but honestly, right? There's a vibe that I experienced. There's a powerful culture that I experienced. Food, weather, these kind of things. These things that I experienced in Cartagena, Colombia, and Colombia in general, the people being super nice, what it did, it makes me, unfortunately, become a little bit more critical of my country. Again, I love the United States. I love it. But it makes me see that certain things that I didn't even notice were problems, I now see as problems now that I've returned to the United States. And I don't want to get into those specifics now because I think in my channel I'll describe those things in the future. But long story short, what the trip to Colombia allowed me to see is that although I love my country and all of that, I could honestly, with me studying the language and with me embracing and immersing myself in the culture, I honestly could see myself moving to Colombia, and if not Colombia, a different Spanish-speaking country as I continue to travel more. It just opened my mind to different ways of life, different lifestyles, different perspectives on the world, different perspectives on work, on family, on food, on health. There's just a lot of stark contrasts that I was not necessarily ignorant to, but my assumption initially was like, hey, we're all humans. Everything's pretty much the same. We speak different languages in different places. We got different cultural quirks and different cultural norms, but for the most part, we're all the same. But through this trip, I learned there's some things that are just human characteristics, but there are major differences in between these, in between countries that can provide, depending on your perspective, better qualities of life, better cultural experiences, better environments for your mental health, your physical health, these things. And I know I'm being kind of vague here, but again, I just wanted to talk about how, my perspective is now a little different, just on the world in general. And so I hope that through the Spanish language, I can continue to explore different parts of Colombia and different parts of the Spanish-speaking world, because honestly, as somebody from the United States, these countries, they're our neighbors. We all live in the Americas, and so it's very convenient to be able to travel to these places and obviously practice the language. That's a major portion of my channel, but I also would like this channel to be a journey through, a journey where we can all learn about different cultures through the Spanish language as well. So I'm not a fan, as I always say, of making my videos super long. So hopefully this gave you a little insight into my trip to Colombia in general, and specifically Cartagena, Colombia. I've got more videos coming out about the trip. I just kind of want to space them out so you all can have videos, to watch about that experience. But yeah, if you have any comments for me, any questions, of course, leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll make sure to respond to all of them. But outside of that, I just wanted to leave you all with that. So I'll talk to you all soon.